we didn't get this. If it gets this far, it usually means it's going to work.
It says it's streaming live on Facebook. So.
Oh, perfect. I'm just checking if it is live now. So.
Always worth doing that, double check the other end.
Yeah, I don't want it to happen. I did a podcast before, and we did an hour and a half of really good stuff. Obviously, we're not hour and a half today. An hour and a half of good stuff, and then it literally didn't record. And then we did it again. And you know when you just didn't quite have that same feel. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, it is working. Perfect. So we are live. So I'm here with Dr. Adam Bibbey, who has been on the podcast before. You may have seen it probably 2 months ago.
Yeah, around that.
I guess. Adam also does lots of Q&As in our Kickstart program as well. And I'll let Adam describe his background now, actually, for anyone that doesn't know your background. So Adam, over to you.
Yeah, so welcome to everyone that's watching. So my kind of, I'm a university lecturer. That's my kind of day job. My main area of interest and also research is looking around stress, personality, and also behaviour change as well. So whether that's taking up positive behaviours, so exercise, healthy eating, or equally kind of reducing negative behaviours such as snacking, smoking, alcohol drinking, whatever it might be. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what I'm all about.
Yeah, perfect. So what I wanted to do today is make this really practical in that we take some questions that we've had already and we just kind of fire through them and of ways to actually what you can do from it and actually go and apply rather than, I guess, like just talking about it, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go through these questions and we'll just go straight on if that's all right.
Absolutely, yeah.
So some questions I've had, and we did touch on this last time. So the first one was, and these are kind of obstacles, I guess, to achieving a goal, whether that's weight loss, fitness, feeling better about yourself, whatever it is. So this first one was, it was main obstacles. I put out a post, what are you struggling with most? I just can't stop snacking. How do I stop snacking? What would be the first kind of go-to with that?
Yeah, I think it's, I guess there's a couple of things that we can do practically. So first of all, I think having set goals, and whether that is a goal to lose weight or whether it's a meal plan, which gives you some structure, then hopefully within that, it allows some form of snacking, okay? But it's important that when we do set meal plans that they're not too restrictive. And I think that's sometimes where people fall down. They, as you mentioned last week on the Q&A about when you first set goals and come up with your structured meal plan, you're at a stage where you're very excited, you're very motivated, and sometimes we can be over ambitious with that. So we mentioned about SMART goals last week, and that realistic element of SMART goals can sometimes be unrealistic because we're setting those goals at a time where we are unsure of what's actually achievable. So I think snacking is always seen as a bad thing or a bad connotation to it, but actually snacking in itself can have positive kind of connotation. So if you have 3 set meals a day and you maybe get up really early in the morning, then you have a set lunchtime, then you have an evening meal, there will probably be prolonged periods of time where you don't have any food intake. So really it's about making sure if you are snacking, you're eating the correct foods, okay? And not restricting yourself too much that you feel as though you're in a kind of such a calorie deficit that you then want to snack on high energy food, okay? So high calorific foods. And I think it's about allowing you to have a set structure that's going to be workable, okay? And then hopefully that will prevent snacking, okay? As I said, if you do snack, we talk about something within psychology or behavior change called implementation intentions. And really this is kind of an alternative for what you might do, okay? So let's say, for example, you know that you always want a snack at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Rather than snacking on biscuits, create a substitute for that. Okay, so you're still having that snack time, all right, but maybe it's something like an apple or a piece of fruit or some other form of healthy snack. So it's not as if you feel as though you're restricting yourself, but at the same time, you're still filling that kind of gap where you might be snacking on unhealthy foods.
Yeah, no, then definitely. I think that's important to have that structure. And I know you mentioned about being too rigid with it, but also there's the argument that people can be so flexible that it works the other way, right? So if we're sometimes a bit too flexible, we have so many options that we then almost get decision fatigue, and then it's like, yeah, because when you get the option, let's say, and this came up the other day, it was like, I can eat fruit as much as I want according to some diets, but then the issue with that is it's then like, oh, when do I not eat it? Because every time I walk in the kitchen, and I gave the example of, at the moment, my kids literally just go in, they grab a few bites of an apple sometimes and leave it on the side. Sometimes they come back to it, sometimes they don't. But it's so tempting every time I go in there without some plan, just to go, you know what, there's half an apple there. I don't want to waste the food, like, so it's having that as well. And I think with the implementation intention, it's something we talk about a lot, is having kind of some rule within it. So it might be that, after dinner, I will have one snack, or at 3 p.m. I will snack on, insert food here. Or saying, like, with some people it works quite well, is having like a 300 calorie allowance for what the snacks is you want. Because like you said, when you are so rigid, sometimes you can end up actually eating way more. So, let's say you go on a really harsh calorie deficit, you've watched Michael Mosley and you're going all in on it. And then we think we're eating 800 calories a day, but actually, because we're not actually sticking to it, and on some days we just have a bit of a binge, we're actually eating closer to 1500. And then all of a sudden we're saying that 800 calories isn't working, but actually it's because we're not sticking to the 800 and maybe eating a bit more. And then it does come to the physiological side of it. So am I getting enough protein in? Am I getting enough veggies in to actually hit the physiological side of hunger? Then you've got that psychological side of, okay, am I being too rigid? Am I actually giving myself some structure and a plan within it at the same time?
Yeah, definitely. And I think and we speak a lot, with the ladies that you work with, in terms of, if you set your goals that are so rigid and, you're always focusing on that weight loss, which is that objective outcome measure, then are you going to be able to sustain that weight loss over a prolonged period of time? And equally, if you're so restricted, are you going to do it in a happy, positive, psychological manner? Okay. And as much as you think that end point of reaching the top of the mountain is, that's the goal, if you're never actually enjoying the journey up, which is actually the hard miles, then sometimes by the time you get there, if you do get there, then you kind of resent that a little bit. So I think snacking has a place, definitely. It's giving that flexibility to also know that sometimes if you do overeat a little bit, that you can just press the reset button and don't throw everything out of the window. Okay, so you still have some flexibility, but not too much, as you mentioned. And just bringing in a couple of scientific studies just to kind of highlight this point. It's something called the soup bowl experiment. Okay, so it was done a few years back now, and it was about 2 different groups of participants within this study. One group was given a bowl of soup, and once they finished it, that was it. They had to go and ask for another portion if they wanted any more. There was another group that the actual bowl filled up from the bottom, and what they did was they just kept eating. Okay, and because it was just being replenished, people overate because it was just there, and it was hard to break out of that cycle of, okay, I'm full now, I've had enough.
Yeah.
And that's why Pringles have done such a good job in terms of, once you pop, you can't stop, because you've kind of got a set point, and it's difficult because you've got so many crisps there in such an orderly fashion, and you can just keep pouring and eating more and more. Sometimes it's difficult to break out of that repetitive cycle of eating, snacks and things like that. And that's where I know that you do a good thing in terms of portion control. Okay, so actually portioning out snacks or meals, so then you don't end up with that bag of crisps, that bag of sweets. You've got a set portion of, you know, whatever, 4 or 5 sweets. Once you've had those, actually snack, you're happy with that, then move on.
Yeah, because ultimately it's a tricky one, but if you eat out of a packet, you're less aware of how much you're eating compared to if it's in a bowl. Then you've got the smaller habits you could apply, like keeping the bowl 6 feet away from you in the evening. And we're going to go into this in a bit later, because I've had a question on it about, you know, the other half coming in with food when you're not hungry, but you want to say yes, and people pleasing and all that stuff, which is a big thing. And I do get that's a bit of an obstacle, but we'll come on to that in a second. But yeah, really simple things you could apply from that though is, yeah, in terms of like a rule, is literally with your snacks, making sure, like, try not to eat out of packets. So just put it in crockery, and then making sure that you don't just have it in front of you. For example, watching a film, right? There was one study in, I think they looked at how much popcorn people eat depending on the movie. And it was like horror films, people ate the most, because you're just like, I'm just panicked and like my anxiety levels are high, and we're just like, just eat. And if you relate that, it makes total sense, right? If you're stressed at a desk or you got work to do, it's a nice feeling to go and eat, because it's procrastination, isn't it? It's like, oh, it's not that I'm resting and being lazy, I'm eating, so I'm doing something, then I'll get to my work. And it's kind of a comforting feeling. Yeah. Cool. If anyone has any questions, by the way, as we go in with this, or if you want to add anything, just comment below and let me know. I'm going to go on to the next question now. So the next one, unless you've got anything else to add to that one.
No, I think the point that you made there about decisions as well. So just by another little study. So there's a study that offered, it was a range of different sweets, so number of sweets, and there was 2 sweets that you could choose from. Oh no, sorry, there was 1 sweet that you could choose from, so you had no choice. You had to eat the sweet that was offered to you. Then I think there's a choice of 3, okay? And then there's a larger choice, let's say, for example, 30, but it was just the same 3 kind of repeated over and over again. And when people were asked how much they enjoyed the sweets that they had, they said when they only had 1 choice, there was less enjoyability because you were forced to have that. You can choose from. So I think that's where it's important to have that element of choice and control, so you're not forced and restricted into a certain thing that might not be what you want. But when they're given too much choice, and we see this now when we're looking for holidays, for, you know, clothes, things like that online, there's so much choice that actually that can cause us to have stress. We're unsure if we're making the right decisions, and that often leads us to have less enjoyment. Okay, so again, if we're relating that back to kind of snacking, if we kind of have, you know, 2-3 different choices of snack which we can go to and have that element of autonomy, so kind of control and choice in what we do, then we're more likely to enjoy it, because we're not overwhelmed with the decision making that we have to undergo. And you mentioned there about decision fatigue. Absolutely. If we're always faced with, you know, you haven't got that set structure of that meal plan, then it's always, what can I eat? How much of it? And it's that kind of tempting element of, oh, I'm not sure, so I'm just going to eat lots of it, i.e. the fruit example that you gave. So yeah, I think it's having enough choice, but sometimes too much choice is a bad thing.
Yeah, and I think it's knowing you, isn't it, and what kind of makes you tick. Because, and this brings me on to one of the other questions was, and we'll go into this now because I think it does tie in very well. So I'm more of an all or nothing person. So I either need to say I'm not eating any carbs or I'm going to eat carbs. What do you say to that? And it doesn't have to be carbs. It could be I either give up alcohol for a month or I drink it. I just one or the other.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and that relates quite nicely to the personality research that I do, is that people have different preferences for how they diet or reduce certain behaviors, or even uptake, you know, physical activity. I myself was always an all or nothing person, so I would never have a drink during the week, it would be have a few beers on the weekend, etc. But actually, physiologically, that's worse for you. So we hear a lot about binge drinking being bad. And actually, if you look at the kind of the processes that your body has to undergo to get rid of all those toxins from the alcohol, etc., it's much better to try and space that out a little bit rather than having the same amount, but just within one hit. Okay. And I think it can work either way, really. I think for people that want to feel as though they've restricted themselves for a month, let's say dry January, and they get to the end of that, I think the positive of that is for them to understand that they don't need alcohol on a daily basis. So they can go back to having it maybe 2-3 times a week, but it's the fact that they now understand that they can do it if they want to do it.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot around kind of self-regulation, which is that kind of level of ability to say no or yes when we need to, essentially. And it is just that kind of self-reflection of, yes, I can do it, but also understanding the benefits of the long term. Okay, so let's say we're restricting ourselves of carbs. Okay, so we're severely reducing our carb intake. One, it's probably not great for us physically, but two, how long can you actually sustain that for? Okay, and if we reduce our calories too much, then our body starts to store fat because it's kind of like, well, when's the next meal coming? So actually what we want to do is everything in moderation for a long-term sustained effort. Okay, because we hear lots about people going on yo-yo diets, weight fluctuating up and down. One, that's not good for you physically, probably not good for you mentally either, because yes, you've achieved something and then you start drifting back the other way. If you kind of hit small targets, and that's where goal setting comes in a little bit, then that overall allows us to hit our kind of longer term targets. And through that, we hopefully do it in a more sustained manner, and also in the manner that we're not restricting ourselves too much. We can still go out and have that evening glass of wine, have that nice meal with friends and family.
Yeah, which is always going to have those psychosocial benefits that a lot of people, well, we often don't think about when we're going into a weight loss or fitness journey. We often think, you know what, I'm in this to do this now. And like you said, maybe for certain people, that's a good thing to do, to almost prove that you can do it. Or it sounds weird, but prove that maybe it's not the best thing for you to do. Either way. It's like, you know, if someone comes to me and they say, right, I'm going to go on the keto diet, and, you know, my thoughts are, well, given your goals, where you want to be in a year, like given the fact that you have lots of social events coming up, you know, I could have the opinion of, you know, maybe it's not the right thing, but actually it's better that we try it together. We work through it. Let's see the obstacles that come up. And it might be that elements of the keto diet suit you really well to achieve a calorie deficit, but then you're flexible so you can kind of make it your keto diet, if you like. When you have social events, you do X or Y. So it's not that you're scared of carbs anymore. It's like, okay, keto diet, the benefits are I'm full up and I'm able to lower my calories when I'm in control. However, when I'm eating out, I just eat more of a balance. My fats go down, so my calories go down, but also my carbs go up. So the calories stay the same. And also I could go into another area of research about like metabolic flexibility in terms of being able to use carbs and fats as fuel, which could be something else beneficial without even knowing anyway. But yeah, I think evidence you can do it is such a key thing, especially when you consider that most of the time we often use evidence, especially with a lot of the people I work with, to prove that we can't do it. So it's like, you know, I've failed before, so, you know, I always do well. Matt, I always do well in the first 2 weeks, and weeks 3 and 4, I always fail. And it's almost, we then can live up to that. And it's like, you know, it's like focusing on the scales too much. Let's say you've added in resistance exercise, you're getting stronger, you're feeling better, but the scales are going down and up 1 to 2 pounds. I had this the other day, and I get this a lot. And I get it can be really frustrating because we want to see the scales move, but the scales are just so like crazily like a variable with so many kind of factors coming in, like from how many carbs you eat to how much water you drink to how much exercise you do, to sunburn, to how much you sweat, to hay fever. Like it can go up and down, not to mention women's health in general, like in terms of hormones, menstrual cycle. Like you're going to have so many factors coming in on that. So I think it's really important that we look at more than that, you know, in terms of your habits, in terms of measurements, in terms of, yeah, all sorts in there. So, yeah, and at the same time, I always kind of talk about that. So you build in that evidence portfolio and essentially you then build your confidence to know that, okay, I can do that. And it's just as true that I can do it than if I can't. And that leads me on to kind of the next question in that about maybe if you're one day away from seeing the results. So let's say we always start off really kind of motivated. So we're always starting off motivated. This is essentially where it's going. So I lose motivation after a few weeks, especially when I don't see results. How do I keep it fun and how do I stay motivated?
Yeah, so it's always a good one. As you mentioned there, those first 2 weeks, everyone's super excited. They've got the new plan, they engage in it. It's great. I guess a couple of things to consider. One is, well, the first one, is it achievable? Okay. And why is it after those 2 weeks that motivation drops off? Is it because, as you've mentioned, you've seen no change in the scales? But I think that's where it's important to have additional variables, such as happiness, such as contentment, such as confidence. So a lot of the ladies might just be looking for body confidence. Okay, so it's got, regardless of how much they weigh, how confident are they in their ability to do 2 squats, to have increased mobility, to be more happy, you know, in their general life. So I think that is important to have those factors as well. In addition to that, thinking about setting short-term goals. Okay, so if we have them as a weekly goal, maybe that's too soon, but maybe something after 2 weeks is a good goal to set, because then we can be hitting that. A goal doesn't have to be an outcome goal either, such as, you know, a loss of 2 pounds. It could just be a process goal. So by process, we mean what process or what procedure or activity do I need to do to actually achieve that outcome? Okay, so for example, if we're looking to lose 2 pounds, then the process will be to engage in physical activity three times a week. Okay, so if you've hit those 3 physically active days per week, regardless of what the scales say, you've hit that goal. And so by hitting that goal, hopefully you feel increased confidence in your ability to achieve things over long term. Increased confidence is often interlinked with increased motivation. So if we're setting those short-term process goals that aren't linked to an outcome necessarily, or they are linked to an outcome in the long term, but it's not directly measurable at that time point, then hopefully that increases our motivation over time. Okay, and it's about, as I said, not just focusing on the scales, because we mentioned last week about being healthy. And healthy, first of all, is that physical element, absolutely, but we've also got a social aspect to that as well, and that element of kind of psychological, emotional well-being. And I think sometimes when people engage on a fitness journey, whether it's to increase physical fitness, reduce weight, there's an overemphasis on the physical elements, often detrimental to the psychological aspects. So you've hit your weight, yes. Are you any happier for hitting that weight? Possibly not. Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's that poison chalice of, I've got to hit the weight, keep going, keep going, keep going. As I mentioned, you get to the top of the mountain. The journey up there has been beautiful sunshine, been great. Sometimes you need to turn around, look backwards, see how far you've come up the mountain. Yeah. Sometimes when you get to the top, it's cloudy, it's stormy.
Yeah.
And by the time you've actually got there, you've missed the whole journey,
Yeah.
and you've reached that top now, but actually it's not what you thought it would be. So not always focusing on the end objective measure,
Yeah.
but looking at the process and the small wins as you go, I think is really important.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And there's really good points in that. And in on the body confidence as well. It's like, I think sometimes it's the actual goal we set, because we can sometimes almost have contradicting, competing goals in terms of, I want to be fitter and stronger so that when I age, I'm more independent. I'm helping. I don't want to be able to be reliant on so and so to lift this in the garden. I spoke about this earlier actually. One of the ladies, she said, I've only noticed my progress this year because you tend to do the same things in life in cycles, right? So you tend to maybe do more gardening in the spring, summer, whatever. So she's noticing now that she's like, oh, I never used to lift this, like little things like that, that if she'd have given up because she hadn't have lost weight a year ago or something like that, she might have never actually experienced that. And not to mention, independence aside, like, muscle aging, sarcopenia, all these things, quality of life as we age, risk of falls, fractures. Irrespective of that, you've then got things like insulin resistance, which, has hit the media a lot at the moment with like Michael Mosley talking about a lot of that. But it could be that things are changing that the scales don't measure. Like if you become less insulin resistant, your risk of like type 2 diabetes, for example, could be reducing, ability to utilize energy. So you've got all them benefits of that. And like you said about the process goal, like sometimes in terms of happiness, it could be a better method to just, especially as most of us know what to do. So given that most of us know what to do, it could be an issue that we focus on, okay, in the next 2 weeks, I will hit at least 6 workouts. In the next 2 weeks, I will be under, so let's say someone wants the calorie count, they'll be under, I don't know, over 2 weeks, 22,000 calories or something like that. And it's almost like a budget then. So they can spend 22,000 calories as they like, just be under over 2 weeks. And it's like, hey, when I'm starting to get into the habits of the things that I know I need to do to get the results I want, without the scales just going, oh, you're failing. Because it's unfortunate, but if you think about all the diet programs, the weight loss programs, they almost get us on a journey which is all about loss, forgetting that most people want sustainable fat loss or sustainable weight loss. So if you're on a goal of, you want to be sustainably losing body fat, but then we then neglect any maintenance as failure. So, I haven't lost this week. When we forget that our goal is actually weight loss maintenance. So someone loses 4 pounds and they haven't lost for 8 weeks or I don't know, 4 weeks. It's like, oh, they're actually maintaining it. Or the weight was going up through lockdown. Now it's just staying pretty steady. That's actually progress, but it's hard to understand that when we're bombarded with those messages.
Yeah, absolutely. And we mentioned before about reaching plateaus as well. So let's say, for example, you have a really, really good kickstart to the campaign, 6 weeks in, you've lost weight, feeling more healthy, etc. But then you have that 4 weeks of, losing no more weight, don't appear to be, gaining any extra strength. But as you mentioned there, Matt, and I think it's a great point, there's a lot of variables that we can't measure, such as, vascular health, etc., which are the things that are going to bone density, which are the things that are going to prolong our lives to a better quality of life, because we could all live to 100. Well, not all of us, but you could live to 100 and those last 20 years of your life could be pretty rubbish, really. Reduced mobility, you're having falls, etc. And it's about increasing that quality of life. And I think that's when we look at diets and programs, it's about the quality of the program. And I think with your structured approach to not just look at the scales, I think that's really key and beneficial for individuals that engage.
Yeah.
Sure.
Especially when I think, a lot of times we've almost been conditioned, if you like, to think that that's the variable, when the reality is it's just one variable that is used so often, perhaps simply because it's non-intrusive, and we can use it very quick in like medicine, medical care, without going, oh, I'm just going to take your waist measurement, and having different people might take your waist differently, or the expense of doing a scan. I'm pretty sure soon you'll be able to grab your iPhone and just check your bone density and your cholesterol. You can already do, I think some of them are getting on with blood sugar levels, but yeah, that'll probably be the future. But yeah, cool. I think we've hit that one. Again, if anyone has anything to add, do let me know as I'm going through the questions on here. So next question was, I want to live longer and be healthier. And this related to things that she wanted to see in life. So whether that's like daughter getting married, wants to, live longer to do that and be there, see grandkids, stuff like that. But I can't do the things to do that, and I know I'll fail, essentially. It's kind of, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I guess I don't know the specifics of this, but is it due to failure before? And maybe that's reduced confidence in the ability to go out and make that change again. So again, it might be having a more structured, realistic program. I can't really beat this drum enough. It's being realistic in what you're going to change. Sometimes we look at these huge changes and huge goals, and we think, I can never do that, and therefore we back away from it, so we avoid the situation. And within kind of psychology, we talk about challenge and threat kind of approaches, or approach and avoidance. And it's all about, you're better off doing 5% of something out of, let's say you want to achieve a 10% weight loss. You're better to achieve 5%, and you might still see that as a failure, then not engage at all and achieve 0% change. Okay, so it's about probably looking at what is realistic. Don't get drawn into extreme success stories of people losing so much weight over a period of time. It's about a percentage of you and what's relative to you and what's important to you. So I think first of all is that kind of not having that fear of failure, because sometimes we can just paralyze ourselves by actually overanalyzing things. So we think too much about something, by which point it's already gone. Okay, so you stood at the train station, 2 trains have come in, you're not sure which one to get on to get to your end destination. Before you know it, both trains have gone. You're still on the platform. Okay, so you've gone nowhere. You still stood there. So I think it's about thinking what is achievable, what is actually really important. And also there's an element there to suggest that there is a motivation to change. So whether it is seeing grandchildren grow up, playing with grandchildren, etc. So there's a fundamental emotional kind of buy-in to that behavior. Why not try and engage the grandchildren in that? Okay, or engage some form of social support. So if it's watching the daughter getting married, is there a way that they can come on board with it and support them through it? So it's not a goal that's just isolated to you. You want to do it for that reason, but have that buy-in as well from the other person. So I think, just to summarize, because I've mentioned a few points there, really is to come up with a realistic goal. Okay, it's great to hear that there is some motivation there already. All right, and also come up with some form of social support, possibly to help you through that. And that might be yourself, Matt. It might be the other ladies on the program. It might be friends that aren't even on a similar journey, that are just there as a check-in. I know we spoke about buddy systems before. So having those individuals we know that if a weight loss journey was easy, everyone would do it. Okay, and it's having that support. You might have a bad week, or not a bad week, but a week that you haven't set out to achieve what you set out to, and it's understanding that the road isn't a linear road of every week you're going to hit weight targets or increase physical activity, but there will be relapses. There'll be some weeks that are exceptionally good. It's kind of just acknowledging the journey, as I've mentioned before, rather than just focusing on that end point.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess the ability to stay calm when you would normally lose it and beat yourself up for it, because it's almost our thoughts about the thing than the thing itself. You know, I've messed up before, so that means I'm going to mess up again. But you know, that's when it comes back to that conversation of evidence we can do it. Okay, have you eaten healthily today so far? It's 11:42. Have you eaten healthily so far? Yes, I have. Well, in the present moment, you can do it. So if you always consider you have the present moment to make that choice, then you can eat healthily because you're doing it right now. And that's all that matters. We're in the future when we're thinking we're going to fail again. Oh yeah, but this will come up then. Whereas if we're in the present moment, we aim to make the best choice. It'll probably be a better choice than thinking right now we're going to fail in the future. So there's no point.
Yeah, and that's a good point as well, in terms of, we mentioned at the start of the podcast, having a little bit of flexibility. So rather than saying, right, I'm going to lose, let's say half a stone, okay, in 6 months, and you're 3 months in and you haven't lost a quarter yet, so you think, oh, I'm never going to reach that half a stone. One, it's good to reevaluate goals as you go. Okay, it's really important to do that, and that's why having those short-term goals will allow you to get the confidence if you do achieve them, but equally, if you don't achieve them, allow you to adjust them so you can make sure that you're actually still going to make some progress. And also, it goes a little bit against the SMART principle in terms of having specific goals. Sometimes it's good to have flexibility. So rather than losing half a stone, or 2-3 kg, whichever metric you work in, have a little bit of flexibility, so it will allow you to have those potential bad weeks and those good weeks, and it doesn't derail you if you've come off a strict regimented program. All right, so you don't lose the motivation, you don't throw the towel in, you have that little bit of a buffer. So let's say 3 to 5 days of physical activity per week as opposed to 4. If you don't hit 4, you think, oh, I can't do this. But if you hit 3, it's in that limit, that's great. You're still on the way to actually achieving where you want to go.
Yeah, definitely. Cool, perfect. So this is kind of the key one, really. Last kind of few that I've had on here is so there's two, and they kind of interlink. I struggle letting people down at the expense of myself, but I know I need to put myself first. That's one. And then this is, so I'm gluten intolerant. I find it very hard when a friend or family member goes to the effort of buying something like a cake biscuit so that I can be included. And I get this because I'm the same. I have celiac, so I have found that before. At restaurants, even, like, I'll say, oh, I can't have that bread because I have to eat gluten free. And they're like, oh, no worries. They take it away, and then they like almost surprise you back with like this, look what we've made for you. And it's like, oh, damn it. But I feel it's rude to then say no, especially as often people will say, you are fine, you do not need to lose weight. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a very difficult one, because as you say, you don't want to, you've kind of you've got a bit of an out in terms of, oh, it's not gluten free, that's okay. But then if someone goes over and above, it's I think there's no harm in eating that bread. I mean, come on, as I said, having that flexibility, and it shouldn't, we often look at things on a daily basis or a weekly basis. So I need to eat a certain amount of calories today or do a certain amount of physical activity today. But if you don't do, let's say you don't do your physical activity today, or you do half of your hour sessions, you do 30 minutes, then you could just do an hour and a half tomorrow. So I think that, again, it's having that piece of bread, or having those, gluten-free cookies or whatever it might be, home-baked vegan cookies, whatever it is, isn't going to derail you over the long term. Okay, so at the at the danger of upsetting someone, okay, I think you still eat them and say, that was lovely. It was a really nice treat for me. I really appreciate what you did there. You know, and be very appreciative about that, because we see it much more now with people lactose intolerant. As you mentioned, going to people's houses, they've brought almond milk or they've brought some other form of milk, and as you say, you feel really bad if you then don't uptake that. So I think it's being realistic. It's okay to eat those biscuits. It's okay to have that piece of bread. Obviously, if it's got a certain health, you know, kind of a major health implication, then don't do that. But if it's only a minor thing, then I just think it's being sensible and looking at really in the long-term picture, not being too focused.
Yeah.
And again, if it does slightly veer off from your actual program, don't let that derail everything. Okay, just say, okay, let's take that into account and then move on, kind of move forward.
Yeah, and I think it's good. It's a good point, because I think some of the questions you got asked sometimes is, how often does this happen?
Mm-hmm.
Because realistically, for me, this type of thing will happen like probably like twice a month maximum. You know, like when someone's gone out their way to do something or buy something, or, you know, this is gluten free. We made sure they're gluten free. So I mean, you can fit it in, like I said, but I guess it becomes an issue when you let it be an issue, but also when you're not aware of the facts, in that sometimes we can, you know, it might be a biscuit or a cake. It might be that you just have a small portion of it. You know, I guess the problem is, you know, often there'll be like one gluten-free person there. So I'll give you a prime example. I went to a spa day at Center Parks last year or so, and they do like afternoon tea, and you have to give your dietary recommendation. I said, I'm celiac. Normally you get one tower of like stuff between two, and because that's gluten free, we had one each, and it was like, whoa, we got double the amount. So it was like almost down to me to go, right, how much am I actually going to eat here? So, but my point is yeah, it's up to you, and you'll make still. Although yeah, it might be harder in that moment, it's your choice, in that you can, when you're aware of the facts of, like, you know, necessarily, okay, how many calories are actually in a biscuit? Okay, it might be like 100 in one biscuit. So it might be that you just have one, and maybe even take the rest home and have them as and when, or you even re-gift it, whatever. Like, you make the choice that makes you happy and align your actions with how you want to look and feel, really. Because again, it comes down to, okay, if you have that, then you just beat yourself up, and then you just think, oh, sod it, or just, that's going to be the issue. So yeah, and I guess it comes down to controlling what you can within that. And I guess it comes on as well to, and I guess this is a bit of a different issue, because this is more current. So this one was more, you know, you're in your evening and the other half comes in, pours a glass of wine, puts your favorite chocolate in front of you. What's your thoughts on that? And that's every night. Then it ends up being like this thing. And yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess a couple of things there. Just going back to previous one. So if someone's made you that vegan cake,
yeah,
why not then offer it back to them? They might actually prefer it. So as an example, chicken nuggets, you get corn chicken nuggets. I think they're absolutely beautiful. And I wouldn't probably necessarily know the difference, really. And if we're looking at, you know, the ethical issues around eating meat and environmental kind of duty of that, then why not kind of give it back? And just because everyone's always been a meat eater or whatever, then sometimes actually vegetarian dishes are a lot more kind of flavoursome, because it's not being masked by that, you know, large piece of meat that comes with the veg that's served as a kind of an afterthought. So yeah, that was just going back to the previous question. But in terms of kind of being in and around other individuals that try and not derail you, because they're not doing that on purpose, I'm sure, but it probably just fits with their own lifestyle. First of all, possibly get them in on the journey as well. Make them aware of how important it is to you to stick to that diet or to get on that journey. Okay, by that, then hopefully they'll understand that importance, and then obviously understand that if they tempt you with it, then that's not a good thing for them to be doing, kind of morally. And equally, you could bring in those implementation intentions again. So I mentioned about having that kind of alternative. So we know now in terms of wine and beer, there's so many different non-alcoholic versions or low calorie versions of food, of drinks that we can do. Then maybe substituting that when you're having your favorite piece of chocolate, when you're having your favorite bottle of wine, with a substitute, still have that favorite bottle of wine maybe once a week on a Friday, but substitute it with a low calorie version throughout the week. Okay. So that's a kind of practical implication. And also, just finally going back to the first point I made, maybe just educating the other person as well around the benefits of your journey, or actually having those calorie substitutes, and then hopefully, you know, in time they might come on board with that as well. So I think it's making people aware of why you're doing things, because sometimes people look at a vegetarian and think, oh, they're one of those people again. Okay. And if they understand why it's important to you personally, but also why you might be doing it in terms of environmental impacts, etc., then you'd hope that if they actually do care for you, or, you know, have that emotional investment, then they wouldn't want to put you in that situation of eating or drinking something that you don't particularly want. So I think education is important, and also being kind of offering alternatives. It's a not an all or nothing. It can be half a glass of wine, that's okay, that's all I want, thank you.
Yeah. Or yeah, like one example I actually went through just last week was, I said, do you want to actually change it? And then they said, well, we've done it before, so I could just suggest it, that we just drink Friday, Saturday and Sunday. But it's just got into that habit, you know what, why not? Sunny day, it's Tuesday, it's Wednesday, it's sunny, you know, whatever. You just get on with it, and just starts becoming a habit. So yeah, I'm just conscious of time. We got one more question, is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. So I just don't put any effort in to exercise or to eat the right foods. Everything is convenient and easy. For example, eating a bag of crisps rather than cutting up peeling fruit. I also have lots going on, and this doesn't leave me much brain space for planning new things. So I just go to food and behavior I'm comfortable with. Not sure if there's anything that you could suggest to help.
Yeah, it's a really good one. And we've mentioned before about society being so fast paced now, and often if we're so dedicated to work or other kind of factors, that we often let other things drift, or we don't invest time in that. And, you know, following a diet plan doesn't have to be time consuming, and it goes back to doing something that is going to be achievable, and not trying to reinvent the wheel, totally reinvent your diet. So first of all, make those meals potentially easy to do. Yeah. And secondly, and I used to do this, was cook for the next few days. Okay. So on a Sunday evening before the working week started, I'd cook, you know, Sunday, and that will probably see me through till Tuesday evening. Tuesday evening, cook again, see me through for the next couple of days. And then by the time the weekend comes around, you can, you know, treat yourself to a few extra bits. So I think it's about making that initial investment in time to prepare, which then actually in the long run will reduce your time. And also, and I've said this before about reflecting on a day. So a typical day, what do you do? What time do you get up? You go to work, you come back from work, what do you do? And it's amazing that the number one reason people give for not doing exercise is, I don't have time. I've got no time in the day to do that. Okay. But actually, if you sit down and reflect on an hourly basis, what have I done in the last hour? It will be amazing how much spare time potentially, I'm not saying this is for everyone, but yeah, for the vast majority, there will be some spare time in the day to do that. Okay. Even if it means going to bed half an hour earlier, waking up half an hour earlier, to fit in some physical activity, to prep your food for the day. Okay. So it's doing that, things like screen time at the end of the night. I know I'm quite bad for this. I get into bed, get on the phone, and before you know it, I've wasted 5 minutes, whatever it might be. Yeah, it's so easy. And that goes back to that soup bowl experiment I mentioned.
Yeah.
We see it now on Facebook and Instagram. If you watch a video or a story on Instagram, it just rolls over to the next one.
Yeah.
So you're in that loop, and you have to have a conscious effort to get out of it. Okay. And that's why it's just that kind of continuous feed. So that continuous feed of soup that was coming through, people would just continue to eat and eat. And we do it now on our mobile phones, or if we're watching Netflix, for example, we're watching a series, you've watched one, it ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, it automatically rolls through to the next one. So you're like, oh yeah, one more. And then before you know it, you're an hour over your normal bedtime, and you've lost that hour. You wake up in the morning, you're a bit groggy, you're a bit tired. If that's me, I know when I'm tired, I'll just eat rubbish. Okay. Yeah. So it's all kind of a knock-on effect, really. So just bringing it back to the question, I think preparation is really key. Just make a little bit of time, whether it's prepping 2 days in advance, that's great. Finding meals that we see lots and lots of recipe books now that are 20-minute meals, okay, pinch and nom, etc., etc. That you can do in 20 minutes. It's having the ingredients. We have the flexibility now of getting ingredients delivered to our door, so we don't even have to go shopping anymore.
Yeah, it's like those HelloFresh kind of meals as well. And even and as like a nutritionist, I remember like even when I was first like talking about all this stuff, you know, let's say go back like 10 years, I might be going, oh yeah, ready meals are full of rubbish. Now I look at ready meals and I go, they're okay. they're just a list of ingredients in foods, and I'm like, they're not that bad. Maybe some are quite high in salt, but some they're actually portioned perfectly. So you don't, one, get tempted for more, two, waste food. Because although it seems like, you know, oh yeah, it's not good to eat a ready meal, maybe from some aspect it is, because you waste less food, which, you know, if you're talking about the environment, is probably more, you know, increasing your carbon footprint more than anything, whether you waste it as in eat it or waste it as in chuck it in the bin. So yeah, but going back to that, yeah, I guess, and sometimes you mentioned planning. I actually go sometimes, you know, because when you're in that space where literally, you know, I get it, like sometimes any suggestion, it's just like, no, not going to do it. Sometimes I actually suggest not to plan, because thinking that you have to plan means that you won't do it.
Yeah.
And in that aspect, I just say, okay, today, every time you eat, you're going to eat out of crockery, sat down. Like make it the smallest step. And that's why we have like 3-minute workouts as well that you can do. 3 minutes, done. Or it could be as simple as I'm going to do 2 minutes of squats to my favorite song. And not just, and music, you know, I know you've looked at kind of music, haven't you, with mood, have you?
Yeah, looking at music research, yeah. The power of music is...
Yeah. In terms of how you feel, like when we do a song challenge with like, I don't know, Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer. Like song challenge, we basically, it's like, you know, hold a squat. Every time you hear Living on a Prayer, you squat up and down. And people's energy levels after, I feel so much better now. It's like bit of music, bit of exercise, 3 minutes. And you're like, wow. And then someone comes in and goes, oh, I've got some bad news. And you're just like, oh, it's fine. Don't worry about it. So,
yeah.
Like, the world's ending, you know. Don't worry. Yeah, cool. I think we've covered everything on there. And we've, covered a lot. That was really good, actually. Yeah, perfect. So anything else you want to add to that? Anything you want to say, add in? Where can people find a bit more? Obviously, you do. Adam does live Q&As fortnightly in our Kickstart program. But yeah, anything else you want to add to that? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I think just in terms of general programs that you get on, just don't look at the end point. Look at the journey as you go. Look at the other factors such as your, you know, psychological happiness, because often you're looking to lose weight to be more happy. So if you're losing weight but you're not doing it in a happy manner, then is it actually worth it? Yeah, I've got an email address as well, which we can put up on the Twitter, so you can always send me direct questions or go through Matt. As we mentioned, we do Q&As, and we have kind of specific topic discussions as well. And in that format, it's nice because we can get specific questions as we go along as well. But yeah, my email is adambibbey@gmail.com. So Adam and then bibbey@gmail.com. If you have anything specific, fire it over to me. If not, then of course we can go through Matt. So brilliant. Thank you.
Perfect. Brilliant. Great stuff, Adam. Thank you for coming on. And then if anyone wants to add any questions below or ask Adam or myself, just let me know.
Fabulous.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Adam.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Take care. See you later.